Thank you so much, Chris. So I'm going to talk to you guys about blood. It's a little less morbid than it sounds, but we've seen how, as Chris explained, over the years, over thousands of millennia, a tremendous variety of different species has arisen. And Darwin's axioms were clear on this. When you have variation, when you have selection for some variants over others, and when some of that variation is heritable, you get evolution. But there's one question that Darwin couldn't answer here, and that's how this variation, how this variety comes about. It's one thing to have a finch or to have a child with a slightly bigger nose than you or whatever, but it's a different thing to produce a line that has a new structure that you don't even have anything remotely close to. We come, when you go farther enough back, from the meekest and the weakest of worms. One of my professors calls our ancestors that lived in the bottom of the ocean before they even had fins or anything. Do you know what he calls them? They were jawless, mud-sucking bottom feeders. They didn't have gills, they had gills. They didn't have jaws, they didn't have legs, they didn't have arms, they didn't have fins or eyes or fingers. So how do you get from that to us? How do you get from that to a brachiating gibbon or a flying bat or a flying bird? This is something that Darwin couldn't really answer because he only had access to the incredible variety of life around him and at a superficial view. He couldn't look inside animals. Now, understanding the origin of variation, understanding the origin of this variety is critical to understanding the evolution of life on Earth. And to do that, we need to look past the fur and past the skin of these amazing creatures and dig a little deeper. We need to look at the blood. As the prolific author Joyce Carol Oates said of people long ago, our blood links us. And in that blood, in that weird cosmic goop inside us, we can understand how evolution creates this variety from nothing. Now, to avoid being morbid, by blood here, I'm just using blood as a metaphor to stand in for all that goopy stuff inside us, everything that's going on behind the scenes. As we'll see, that's where the magic happens. And by looking at that goopy stuff, by looking inside animals, we can understand critical aspects of how they evolve. As we'll see, it's all in the genes and how they change between animals and between people, mainly between animals. So, DNA. We've all heard of DNA in one form or another. It's what FBI agents look for at crime scenes. It's what doctors are concerned about if you're at risk for different forms of cancers. And that's because our DNA is kind of like a fingerprint that helps to distinguish us from all other people, and in fact all other animals, and says something important about our physical characteristics, like our propensity for disease. Now, if you've seen Gattaca, or Jurassic Park, or any sort of recent sci-fi movie set in the near-distant future, you've also probably seen a graphic that looks like this. This is roughly what DNA looks like, give or take a few complexities. And it's this sort of double helix, coily looking thing that's this tiny microscopic thread that's coiled and crunched up together inside all the cells in your body. I'll explain in a minute. And within this DNA, there are sort of functional parts called genes. DNA is effectively divided up into genes. And those genes are what make you physically what you are. Genes are by no means the whole story, especially for people. Right, we have this special ability to exert our own psychological and cultural influences over ourselves and the people around us, and so we can really supersede our genetics in a lot of ways. So I'm not endorsing any kind of genetic determinism here, but our genes can sort of generate a blueprint for what we physically become, as we'll see now. Now, to see this, let's get oriented with generic bearded man. This is actually the protagonist from the Hangover movies, but that's neither here nor there. Here he looks very prim and proper, but he's very disheveled in those movies. So those genes, that DNA, all reside in cells, and cells make up our entire body. Blood cells make up our blood, skin cells our skin, and sensory cells the retina of our eyes. And all of those cells house our DNA. All of them house that coily structure that contains our genes. But this sort of creates a problem that we need to think about. So inside those genes, there is a hidden secret that we can use to figure out how life evolves and how evolution generates variety sort of out of nothing. But there's a problem associated with that, and that problem is this. We're made out of cells. Our genes make our cells what they are. And all of our cells have the same genes. So one puzzle that perplexed scientists for a while was, why are all of our cells so very different? All the cells in your body have genes for seeing color and growing hair. So why is it that only through your eyes can you see beautiful paintings, and only through follicles in your skin can you grow hair? The answer is that genes are a lot like switches. They can be turned on or off. And if they're on, they do stuff. They exert their effect. But if they're off, they're dormant. They're silent. They don't do anything. Different genes can be turned on or off in different cells in different parts of the same animal. And this is why, even though all the cells in your body have the same genes, only your eyes can see beautiful paintings and only follicles in your skin can grow hair. All the cells in your body, from the ones at the tip of your toe to the ones at the top of your head, have genes for seeing color. But only in your eyes are they turned on. Now, by turning on and off in different parts of your body, genes draw a blueprint for what you physically become. Just like the pen strokes in a blueprint, turned on genes literally draw the structures that become your organs. And this isn't just true for us, it's true for all living things. An eye gene tells your body to put eyes on your heads, and an arm gene to put arms on your sides. So, you might be wondering now when exactly this happens. Is it happening now? Is it going to happen tomorrow? Is it always happening? Was this happening when I was a child? When is this blueprint actually drawn? When are the genes telling my body where to put everything? Well, it's drawn when you're an embryo. It's drawn for every living thing while they're developing. Now, this is just a chicken embryo. This is not a human embryo. But they all look fairly similar at this stage in development. Now, by embryo here, I just want to clarify that I mean everything an animal is before it's born. So when a sperm and an egg come together, they fuse to form an animal that continues to grow and divide, for us inside of a pregnant mother, for other animals inside of an egg or whatever. And until that animal is hatched or born, it's called an embryo. So these are embryos in green here. That sperm and egg fuse to form a single cell that divides and grows into a homogeneous mass, into that thing over there. And from that mass, that homogeneous blob of cells, somehow an animal is built. And eyes and ears and wings and fingers are all put in the right place before the animal is even born. To create something like, an incredible human child. Or, as I've highlighted here, a fruit bat. Fruit bats I only highlight here because I think they have the most adorable newborns in the whole animal kingdom besides people. I mean, look at how cute! It's adorable! But to create that adorable little fruit bat, you need to do a sort of daunting task. If you were an engineer, this would be kind of stressful. You have to turn this homogeneous bunch of cells into a proto-animal with eyes and ears and wings and fingers. Which is, if you think about it, a lot like turning a pile of Lego bricks into a house. In both cases, all you need is a blueprint, an instruction manual. Young sir, could you tell me what this is? Can you tell me what these are?
These are Lego instructions.
Yeah, these are Lego instructions. They give you a step-by-step guide for how to build that house or that Lego Death Star or whatnot by telling you how to arrange all of the Lego pieces. They also make great gifts for kids and grandkids. Speaking from experience. I don't have grandkids, but I was a grandkid once, yeah, so yeah. And the same thing again, happens in an embryo. Genes give the body instructions for where to put different structures. In this way, just as the Lego instructions contain the blueprint for the house, the genes contain the blueprint for the embryo. So this is how every embryo can start out as that homogeneous bunch of cells and become a fully formed creature. As that bunch of cells keeps dividing, it grows. And as it does, different genes turn on in different places to turn these cells into recognizable structures. One gene turns on at the front of the head and tells the embryo to put eyes there. And another gene turns on at the sides of the body and tells the embryo to put arms there. And so on. And the embryo does. And in this way, our bodies get built. By putting all the parts in the right place. By following the blueprint. So, where am I going with this? How does this relate to the great variety of life on Earth that we're trying to explain? How does all this talk of embryos and blueprints contribute to evolution? Well, it's a lot like the puzzle we considered with the bearded man before. Between species, as between cells in your own body, on genes change where they go. That's the secret. That's the hidden key to the evolution of life on Earth. On genes change where they go. By changing where they're on and off in the embryos of different species, genes create variety, generating new structures and creating the variation we've seen so much already. Now, to show you how this can actually happen over the course of the evolution of a single lineage, to show you how changing where they're on and off, to show you how by changing where they're on and off, genes can create new variety, I'd like to look at an example, which we've seen before in a much cuter form. The fruit bat, all grown up from when we last saw him. Bats, like the gibbons Chris told you about, and like the birds Dalton's going to tell you about, have much longer arms than their ancestors. As Chris explained before, they fly on skin flaps attached to really long fingers. But most mammals, like that squirrel over there, and in fact, Bat's own ancestors didn't have long fingers. They had short fingers, like us. So how did bats get them? How did this new form, this new variety, the bat wing, evolve out of nothing? We can discover the answer by going back to this blueprint, by looking at how bats are put together, by looking at bat embryos to see what genes are turned on and off in bat fingers to make them this way. And one study has done just that, comparing the embryos of bats, which look really scary, to those of animals with short fingers, and seeing what genes were turned on in bat fingers that made them different. By looking at what genes were turned on and off in the cells that compose those fingers, this study was able to figure out what it is about bats that makes them so special. Now, to see what they found, let's zoom in on a bat embryo as its limb is forming. In the embryonic limb, two key genes are responsible for making the arm grow outward, grow longer. Let's call them yellow and red. Yellow is expressed at the bottom of the arm, and red is expressed at the tip of it. Now, these two genes have special functions. The cells expressing yellow give a signal to the cells expressing red, telling them to turn the red gene on. And the cells expressing red are the ones that really do stuff. They tell the arm to keep growing longer at its tip. So red is really what makes the arm grow longer, but it only does its stuff if yellow tells it to. So as the limb starts to form, because yellow is on, red is on. And because red is on, the arm grows longer. But as the arm keeps growing, as it keeps getting longer, the yellow cells get farther and farther away from the red cells, so that eventually they get too far away to reach them, meaning they can no longer send that signal telling the red cells to keep the red gene on. As a result, once the arm gets too long, the red gene turns off. So the arm stops getting longer. At the tip of the hand, as the fingers start to form, the red gene turns off. So the arm stops elongating. The fingers stay short. This is where the story ends for most mammals, and this is why most mammals, like humans and squirrels, have short, stubby fingers. But not so for bats. You see, in bats at this point, something special happens. In bats, in the space between the developing fingers near the tip of the hand, yellow turns on again, causing red to turn on again. And red, again, tells the tip of the hand to keep growing. And only after the two regions grow apart a second time does the arm stop elongating. As a result, bats grow really long fingers. This developmental process gives bats the long-fingered wings we see in the group today. This is one example of how our genes drive our evolution. Bats evolved from short-fingered ancestors, but their blueprint changed. It evolved to turn on an old gene in a new place, which allowed bats to fly, to fulfill the job description that they do today. So with this scenario, with the evolution of the bat wing, we see how changes in the genes of animals give rise to changes in form. In this way, the evolution of life is really the evolution of gene patterns. By changing where they're on and off in the embryos of different species, genes create new variety. The blueprint is what really evolves. sculpting our bodies differently to create short-fingered and long-fingered forms alike, to give us the bats, the squirrels, and indeed all of the varied and incredible animal life we walk among today. Genes in that weird cosmic goop inside us create the endless and beautiful forms of life that we walk among. They create that variety. Said more simply, our blood is what makes us different. But it also kind of makes us the same. Because we all share that cosmic goop and the processes that shape it. For each of us, from bats to birds to gibbons, genes lay down the blueprint. We are all linked by blood, and by that same blood do we evolve. Thank you so much for listening. And I'd like to congratulate you all because we have now reached a turning point. So we have now figured out how new structures arise, how you create new variety, but we have yet to figure out why. You see, genes can tell us how new structures form, but they can't tell us why they originally arose, what job they were originally fulfilling. And to answer this stranger, deeper question, we need to leaf further down through the tome of life's history to study the animals who used to walk this planet and the bones they left behind. And for that, I will turn the conversation over to my colleague Dalton, who's going to tell you all about how looking at the fossil record can reveal why structures originally arose for reasons we might never have expected. Here you go, Dalton.
Great. Thank you so much, Caleb.